years ago today, KLAS aired a live interview with an anonymous man who made some really astonishing claims. He alleged that the U.S. military was secretly studying alien technology out in the Nevada desert near a base that is now very well known all over the world, Area 51.
UFOs have been the stuff of conspiracy theorists for decades, often mocked for talking about it, but maybe they shouldn't be mocked. Commander David Fravor spent 18 years as a naval aviator, a pilot.
Truly out of this world.
Navy ships and pilots capturing images about their experiences with what they claim are UFOs. Candace Monticelli joining us to explain. Hey, Candace.
See a disturbance in the water and a white 40-foot long tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water, going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing. So as we drive around in a clockwise flow, we get to about the 9 o'clock position, and I said, well, I'm going to go down and check it out, and the other jet is going to stay high. So as we go down, when we get to the 12 o'clock position, it starts to mirror us. So it's in a clockwise flow, and it's...
Why do you say that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over our heads?
Well, because I know that they are. They've been, as a matter of fact, they've been visiting our planet for thousands of years. And one of the cases that would interest you most, if you give me 2 or 3 minutes to answer, is during the Cold War, 1961, there were about 50 UFOs in formation flying south from Russia to across Europe.
Looking up in the sky, and it was 3 white lines, vertical. There was one that always stayed away from it.
I don't know what I saw.
Blip in the sky, streak of light.
Dark hovering object above a bridge that we were coming back from, and it almost looked like a...
It's weird, kind of amorphous, opalescent kind of thing.
An unidentified object. It was coming in very fast.
It was staying perfectly still and stationary in the sky for about 4 to 5 minutes until it started to move.
And it was so distraught on it, and it was really wicked. And to this day, I don't know what it is. $100.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
It began as a routine naval training exercise, but it would soon become one of the best documented and most baffling UFO sightings of the 21st century. Witnesses include highly trained military personnel, among them several deeply experienced radar operators and fighter pilots who, at the time of the sightings, were at the controls of arguably the most advanced flight technology ever created, and yet no one can explain what they saw. The date was November 14, 2004, and the location was the Pacific Ocean, about 100 miles southwest of San Diego, California. The USS Nimitz carrier strike group, which include the nuclear-powered carrier and the missile cruiser, the USS Princeton, were conducting a series of drills prior to deployment in the Persian Gulf. This film, A Tear in the Sky, is made by these men. Now it's time for these officers to come together to find the truth.
That day we were off the coast of San Diego southwest, kind of off the coast of Mexico, Baja, and I started to notice these weird tracks that were popping onto my radar coverage right about on San Clemente Island. And the reason why I say they were weird, because they were appearing in groups of 5 to 10 at a time, and they were pretty closely spaced to each other, and they were 28,000 feet going 100 knots tracking south. And in the back of my mind I'm thinking, you know, that's kind of odd. I mean, I don't know anything that flies like that. They weren't on the comm air routes, the commercial airline routes. I wasn't really that concerned about them. I didn't consider them hostile for any reason at all. Another watch or two, as I'm watching, the same formation appeared again. And over the course of 3-4 days, it probably counted up to that point, groups of 5 to 10 at a time. There were probably 50, 60 tracks by then.
On USS Princeton, I was responsible for classified material
top secret data recording. In November in 2004, we were doing workups in preparation for our next deployment.
I was on the USS Princeton. I was the leading operations specialist, and basically we control the radars, we man the radars, we fight the ship if we ever go to combat. My primary job was to identify everything that flew in the sky. On November 10th, I started to notice some really strange contacts off the coast of Catalina.
During those workups, we tracked unknown aircraft for several days.
This is the contacts here at 28,000 feet going south about 100 knots, and I'm thinking to myself, I've never seen anything fly like that. I had 15 and a half years actual sea time sitting behind that radar. At one point, it was raining UFOs. I'd never seen anything fly like this, and all the other ships are tracking it too. Fast Eagle flight happened to be airborne. Commander Fravor, the first one to launch off the Nimitz aircraft carrier. These objects fell out. These things went straight back up to 28,000 feet again in less than a second. And then at the very end, it was right in front of him. Disappeared.
They exhibited flight capabilities that were well beyond anything that I'd ever seen before. So I'm pretty familiar with just about the fastest things in the sky, and these things kind of made them look like they're toys.
Because these videos were taken by military servicemen, the Navy and the Pentagon eventually confirmed the veracity of these sightings. Senator Reid, Senator Rubio, and others prompted Congress to investigate these events and publish an official report on these findings.
We all know that the Pentagon report was downright unacceptable for the encounters and plethora of video footage. The best that they could come up with was, well, mostly it's all explicable, apart from one or two, that maybe, or most probably, are Russia or China's secret technology.
Had that bombshell not come out in the New York Times and Politico and CNN, we wouldn't be where we are today. The Pentagon has not been forthcoming at all. They have been a huge pain in the ass regarding this topic, massively. And what's really needed with this topic, real evidence, real data, however long it takes, you know, that's the stuff that becomes foolproof.
The next morning I get up, I said, what the heck, I'm gonna write a very detailed message about what happened. I went back up to Combat Information Center, CIC, and one of the lead technicians, he looks at me and says, Senior Chief, the data isn't on the ship anymore. I said, what are you talking about? He said, somebody came on board our ship and they took our data. In fact, they made us erase everything down in the computer room. Even blank tapes had gotten erased.
We had our data recording for all of our equipment taken off the ship. And on top of that, you know, we were ordered to erase everything that was left in the shop.
And for them to take it, it was highly unusual. I raised my hand and said, I think we got a safety issue here. And I would try to describe what happened, and I got laughed at. I got ridiculed. There was jokes posted, there was cartoons posted about me, and I got so frustrated. It ended my career.
Shipmates lost careers, lost wives, lost, you know, the ability to be able to see their children. You know, these are all the consequences of these events that happen that we're told to not talk about.
Almost hit one. There's a couple things I see. This is all off Virginia, by the way. It's the vacapes. So there's whiskey areas out there too. That's where NAS Oceana goes out and trains. They've tracked them at just sitting there. They've tracked them at high rates of speed. They've been tracked lots. The radars they're using now are even better than the ones that I had in the Super Hornet. It's pretty amazing. More advanced technology, you know, cooler stuff, more capable. They're seeing it. At first they thought when they first saw it, they thought, oh, these are just ghost hits. And I'm like, no, that radar really doesn't provide ghost hits, which are false targets. It's pretty good. And then someone actually threw their targeting pod out there, and there was something there, because you can't hide from the targeting pod if you've got any type of heat signature. And that's what really started this. But they've been seen by many people as far as on the radar. And there's been a couple that have seen visual, because one guy almost hit one. It was just sitting there.
This is recent. This is real recent.
This is within the last 5 years.
These are the guys who were on the USS Princeton. Everybody's been talking about. So why should we work with anybody else? but the real folks who lived it.
You guys started
And so,
it.
yeah. And so this moment is very exciting for me because if you want to bring credibility to this phenomenon, you have to go all the way. I mean, it has to be big, it has to be scientific.
That's the very reason why we started our company, is because we didn't have those answers.
We agree.
It was great that they came out and let everybody know this was a real thing, but there needs to be more done.
Well, the video is one thing, but we've got to get more data.
Personally thinking, we need to go back to where you guys were, Southern California. What do you suggest? What do you think we should do?
Well, we got a couple of locations on that we kind of thought that we're going to, do good coverage of the south part of the island.
Ideal, Carolina, if we could get a house on the beach right here somewhere, that would be ideal, and then maybe a place with a flat roof on
And
Catalina.
then our third location could be the truck.
So if we do have 2 stationary positions and then we have Jeremy in one spot, we could potentially achieve some sort of triangulation, which is very important in collecting data. So at the end of the day, who do we have on the team?
Well, we got myself, Gary Voorhees, we got Kevin Day, we've got Jason Turner.
And we were all on the Princeton together.
We also have Dave Altman and Michael Hall, both experienced UFO researchers. Then we have our scientist, Kevin Knuth, who is an associate professor in physics and an expert in exoplanet research. We also have Matthew Shadagas, an associate professor in physics. His expertise is in dark matter, radiation detection. Then we have David Mason. He's invented several of the devices that can detect communication patterns coming from UAP.
So we have optical, we have acoustic. What else we got?
We got thermal, we've got everything we can throw at it.
With all this equipment and all of us over 5 days, 24/7, if we don't see something, I'm going to be very disappointed.
It would be pretty disappointing if we don't see anything, but that is science, though.
Has this ever been done before?
Never. And not that I know of.
I've never even seen it from the government.
We're making history.
We want to use really high-tech gear to collect some techno signatures. We're hoping to be able to use that technology, if we do find them, to actually handshake these things, or maybe even talk to them.
I gotta tell you guys, after having a tour of what you've got here, I'm really impressed. You're covering the phenomenologies of across the spectrum of physics. I've never seen anything as singularly focused as this effort for one particular type of phenomenon.
So here's another one of these. Can't take credit for this, but this is designed by my friends and colleagues at MIT. This is just a general radiation detector to look for anything that's anomalous above a normal background reading in a given location.
Never showed on the fisheye. So the fisheye never triggered the PTZ. I only saw it on the PTZ camera.
Just trying to check in and see what you guys got going on.
Alright, so we got some weirdness happening here. We saw an object only on the PTZ camera. It did not show up on the fisheye. And I've never seen where I've got 2 cameras within 2 feet of each other. One can see the object and the other one cannot. So it's literally an anomalous thing where one camera is seeing a cloud and the object, when the other camera is seeing just the cloud, but I can't see the object where it should be. It's just not there. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
And that was between 6:07 and 6:13 p.m. Do you have anything on the FLIR at that time?
We have an anomalous object, and this thing is like an elongated, I don't know what to call it, because it's not an aircraft, it's not a bird, it's not a bug, it doesn't fit all of the prosaic objects that we are aware of. And you notice that it's moving where it's contradictory to its trajectory, so it's like it's moving sideways against the wind if it were an aerial object.
This looks pretty similar to the Nimitz tic-tac incident.
It does. It does look like that.
And there was a 32 MeV event. I mean, within the time, synchronization, uncertainty.
And Matthew, I've got something else here. It is an object that appears suddenly in the camera.
Oh, what was that?
There it goes.
There's some...
The object appears and then moves off screen rather suddenly, and then now it looks like it's reappearing.
Is that the same object coming back?
Could be. I mean, it looks like it's in the same location. Did you just see how it zigzagged? It just moved in and moved out. This is exciting.
Certainly anomalous, right? We're not going to be able to explain that easily.
Not very easily. You can't use all the prosaic explanations of bird, bugs, or aircraft on this one. And check this out. We have a object that it'll appear in the frame.
Well, what is that?
You see that?
Yeah.
What is strange is it's registering cold in the thermal camera over several pixels, and it has some motion to it. It looks like it rotates or tilts and appears and then dissipates out of the frame.
That's even weirder than the other things you showed me.
Yes.
What time was this at?
From their perspective, and then we're triangulating and converging at 2 points.
That would mean that we have seen the same object, not only from different angles, but also 3 different wavelengths, visible light, and 2 different kinds of infrared, right? So that is unprecedented in the history of UAP research.
Having correlating data from different instruments with different wavelengths, including radiation, that's just phenomenal.
In science, it's very important, especially when studying an unknown phenomenon, to be able to have multiple different modes or modalities of studying it, and being able to look at correlations between different devices that are studying the same phenomenon. This reduces the probability of equipment malfunction, glitches and things like that, because the probability was greatly reduced of something being accidental if you could see it across different devices, especially if those different devices are based on different technologies and are looking at the same thing different ways.
Thanks for coming out, Ryan.
No, no problem.
Let's sit down and pick your brain for a little while.
Sounds good.
So it's been a while.
It has been.
Thanks for coming by, shipmate. I appreciate you visiting us here while we're doing our research. You were on board when Commander Fravor, his famous intercept and the tictac video was created.
Yes.
Could you walk me through exactly, how you found out, like what you were doing on board? I honestly never had met you, and it's a pretty small ship, so.
Right. I was part of the air detachment. I was the leading petty officer of HSL 43's detachment on board you guys with the Princeton. I had actually been in combat at the time on the phone with the command back home because we needed something for our aircraft. So we were working out the logistics of that. During that time frame, the intercept was going on. There was radar screens, so I was able to see that. And then, of course, all of the commotion and what was going on, around me during that time frame was definitely heightened.
Were you there when the civilians had come on board? I refer to them now as the men in khaki because,
Right. So yeah, I was there when they showed up. I was in the hangar during flight ops. They came in, walked pretty much straight out of the hangar and left. Came back a short time later, but some bags and took off.
I can fill you in on what they took.
Yeah, I know you can do that.
Yeah, all of our data recording. So now that you saw, the tic-tac video and, the gimbal videos, all the stuff that we know about what actually happened and, the flight characteristics of what it could actually do, you being really familiar with aircraft being in the air deck, what did you think about it?
What I thought about it is there's absolutely no aircraft that can do what those things were doing that I know of or have seen.
So, nobody wants to be the UFO guy. And, it's just it's usually hard to talk about anyways. What made you be able to get over all that to talk about it? Was there a real big stigma in the air deck about stuff like that?
Well, there's always a stigma when you talk about UFOs. It doesn't matter if people believe you or not, you're going to get something for it.
I was planning on making a full second career in the Department of Defense as a contractor. But because I was clowned and ridiculed and kind of lost my reputation a little bit, it destroyed me almost. I saw this video on the TV, I was like, oh my flipping God, it's happening. And I dropped the plate of food and I jumped on the internet and found out what had just happened. That moment shook me to the core because I knew my life was about to change again. I had gone through all this pain and suffering, if you will, so I feel validated right now.
My thing is I saw what I saw, and I can't unsee what I saw. And if I saw it, then it happened. And I want to back that up.
For me, I was lucky that I didn't have the level of PTSD that some of the other guys did, but instead of trying to make this public, I internalized. For a long time after the event, I was emotionally completely void. I didn't really care.
We need to tell the truth about the things that we see.
Yeah, that's the one thing that really bugs a lot of us about that too, is that we couldn't tell the whole truth about things. And if you did, nobody would believe you because the government didn't tell the truth either.
Of course.
So do you want to see what we got going upstairs?
I'd love to see it.
All right, let's go do it.
Kevin Day said at one point it was raining tic-tacs. I don't know if these are the same raining tic-tacs that Kevin Day was talking about, but it sure sounds very intriguing, and I can't wait to find out.
What do you guys got?
We've got something really interesting here, Gary. Now watch the screen. What we have is objects that appear to be dropping from the sky, and you see that? It's just there momentarily, and looks like they're actually dropping into the ocean. And
that's crazy.
And I've looked at this and I'm thinking, could this be a camera artifact? However, there's a transition of decay time, so this is very strange.
So could these be like ice forming and dropping into the water, or I mean?
No, because what we're also seeing is it's transitioning where it's appearing in the field of view momentarily and then disappearing, but it's clearly having a trajectory that's downward.
Seeing them come in and then out and then in again when they hit the water.
It looks like they hit the water. It looks like they illuminate in the water.
That's amazing.
Does this remind you of anything?
Sure does. Reminds me of the tic-tacs from '04. They would go from 28,000 feet down to sea level like that. I mean, just straight down, just like that.
I first saw the first group of those, whatever they were, on the 10th of November, and the intercept with Fastigo flight happened on the 14th, and I continued to see these things up until about the 19th of November, and they were always in groups of 5 to 10. But if you were to add up all the groups, it was about 100 of these objects.
There were dozens of such tracks like this, which correlate not only with high energies, but also high rates in the cosmic watch.
After we examined the videos that we recorded, we were able to calculate the size of the objects based on the camera field of view and the distance of the horizon. We found that the objects were at least 4 feet across and falling at least at 5,000 miles an hour, and the objects that were distant were measured out at 69 feet across and falling at a speed of at least 84,000 miles per hour. So even if we were off in calculations by 50%, we have some extraordinary numbers that can't explain this phenomenon as being something natural or known.
So, what kind of category do we think these things are? Are they physical objects, natural phenomena? Are they mental manifestations? Are we all imagining seeing these things? I doubt that, because we measure it with scientific instruments, right? We're not all being hacked, right, and spoofed on this. So, my thoughts are, it is from some sort of intelligent creation, an intelligent construction, meaning it's a technological device. It could be organic, it could be electromagnetic, who knows what. That's stuff, knowledge, information, engineering, that right now, to my knowledge, nobody on this planet knows how to do. Right? So that suggests that it's somebody from some other place has done this, or maybe other time.
I think that's an important point. You mentioned earlier the multiple cases. You mentioned the Bethune case. That's from 1951. And you've got these objects moving at very high accelerations and taking off at high speeds. The pilot estimated it is leaving at about 1,500 miles an hour, and it was tracked on radar from Newfoundland at 1,800 miles an hour. This is 2 years before the airspeed record of 695 miles an hour was broken. So this thing is moving 3 or 4 times faster than the airspeed record.
There are also now declassified reports, thanks to FOIA, mentioning flying white butane tanks. That sounds like a lot like a tic-tac to me. And that was the late 40s, early 50s.
Let me put this in perspective. Einstein, Rosen, and Podolsky came up with these concepts in the 1905 time frame into later about 1913. So in about 100 years is all that humanity has had a basic construct to say faster than light travel, wormholes, warp drives are even possible. And it wasn't until 1994 that someone was clever enough, Alcubierre, came up with the warp physics that says, okay, well, the physics we've learned since 1905 tells us, okay, maybe it is possible to do what they do in Star Trek and other science fiction movies and books. But that's only 100 to 120 years.
Yeah.
Not the
thousands,
universe
not
is
millions,
13.7 billion years old. There's a civilization somewhere near us that's thousands of years old. Their Einstein was 10,000 years ago, for example. So where does that put them now?
What if you have multiple civilizations and they have different technologies and they use different things?
They do.
The other thing that happens is space gets compressed because the distance is shorter. Space isn't empty. You've got about one hydrogen atom per cubic meter. So as you compress space at very high speeds, you're no longer flying through a vacuum. You're flying through a cloud. At close to the speed of light, it's going to rip your ship apart in no time. Unless you have a technology that allows you to travel through matter without affecting it, like we actually see here with crafts moving through the air without sonic booms or moving through water without splashes. We observe that.
That's the other counter that's always given.
Data.
This is what the UFO DAP recorded. There's a hole in the clouds, which is not abnormal to have a hole in the clouds that closes, but notice those strange dots within it. And also, if you go frame by frame, it closes in a fraction of a second. That seems to be too fast for natural cloud formations.
For clouds to move in and close the hole, they would have had to be going something like 700 miles an hour.
How far away was it?
Yeah, I can show you a diagram I've made of the situation. Yeah, so it's basic trigonometry. We're using the known angles, so we know which direction the camera's aiming. We know the field of view of the camera, and that hole was about 18 degrees above the horizon. And so given a cloud ceiling of about 1,700 feet, you can say that that hole was about 1.2 kilometers off the coast. And so it's an elliptical hole.
Okay.
It's about 0.4 kilometers long and then about 0.1 kilometers wide. It looks like it's a hole in the clouds, or it could be a false streak cloud. Those are typically happen when you have very high altitude clouds and a section of the cloud that then spontaneously freezes, and then the crystals fall out and leaves a hole in the cloud. That isn't possible in this case because the cloud ceiling was only 1,700 feet and it wasn't cold enough for it to be that kind of cloud. A hole like that could also be explained from an airplane or another aircraft flying through the clouds that can cause a hole as well. We didn't have any aircraft going through at the time, and the UFO DAP cameras didn't pick up any craft. Now, the cameras did start recording because they detected something.
When Jeremy slowed it down, there's also a new dot that appears in the last couple frames.
Yeah, the dots, there are a few dots appearing, yeah.
Yeah, but there's one fresh, there's one lonely dot, fresh dot that appears.
Did you check the radiation data with any outside organizations?
We did. We looked at the data from Fermi, the NASA spacecraft that looks at gamma ray bursts from distant astrophysical phenomena. There's no correlation there. We did have to check also for solar activity. This event is not correlated with the solar activity.
So, what about the FLIR? Anything with the FLIR?
Unfortunately, the FLIR, about 7 minutes before this event took place, all 8 FLIR cameras shut down. We lost power.
Imagine a technology that can do 600 to 700 G-forces, that can fly at 13,000 miles an hour, that it can evade radar, and that can fly through air and water and possibly space. And oh, by the way, has no obvious signs of propulsion, no wings, no control surfaces, and yet still can defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity. That's precisely what we're seeing.
Hi guys, so to finish this video off, what you're about to see now is some webcam footage basically that I set up into the back garden looking at the night sky. Last year this was, and I did actually capture some light anomalies or some UFO craft, if you like. I believe that these are some sort of craft and not glitches or planes or birds or anything like that whatsoever, purely because they're moving too fast. Let me know what you think. There is going to be a live stream after this premiere tonight, so I do hope that you stay around and catch us for that. Ask us questions about this video that you've just seen, the objects that I've caught, the objects that uapx caught on this film as well. And yeah, we'll leave it there, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes, guys. Thanks a lot. Cheers.